After 50, many men start the day on autopilot. They wake up, go straight to the kitchen, repeat an old ritual, and move on without realizing something has changed in the body. The problem doesn't show up right away. It appears later when the penis doesn't respond the way desire does, and the frustration seems to have no clear cause. I'm Dr. David Miller, a urologist, and what few men understand is that at this stage of life, the timing of certain habits matters just as much as the habit itself. The mature body reacts differently to the same stimuli it used to handle easily. What once gave you energy can now push the body into an unnecessary state of alert, and that quietly comes at a cost to circulation. When the nervous system goes into alert mode too early, the body prioritizes survival, not performance. Blood vessels tighten, blood flow becomes less efficient, and the penis, an organ that depends on fast vascular relaxation, feels it hours later. The mistake isn't enjoying coffee. The mistake is the moment that stimulation hits the system. After 50, the body takes longer to balance stress hormones. If that balance is disrupted early in the morning, it creates a domino effect. More tension throughout the day, more vascular stiffness, less predictability in penile response. The man feels, I'm not like I used to be, but he doesn't connect it to what happened in the first hours of the morning. This kind of failure isn't psychological, it's physiological. The penis doesn't fail because of a lack of interest, but because the blood pathway meets resistance. And that resistance starts long before the intimate moment. It starts when the body learns day after day to function under unnecessary pressure. That's why so many men over 50 report unstable erections without knowing how to explain it. They didn't change anything in the bedroom. They changed, without realizing, the way the day begins. Adjusting the timing of certain stimuli can completely change how the body responds later. Today, you'll understand what this common mistake is, why it matters more after 50, and how small timing changes can bring predictability back to penile response, without tricks and without empty promises. Before we continue, check whether you're already subscribed to the channel. And now comment with just one word. Write timing if you think the problem is when you consume it, or write quantity if you believe excess is the main factor. To understand why coffee starts to weigh more heavily on penile response after 50, you need to look at how the body actually ages in practice, not in theory. At 30, the body absorbs strong stimuli and adjusts quickly. At 50, it still responds, but it takes longer to switch off. The central point here is cortisol, the hormone of the alert state. Coffee raises cortisol at any age, but in older men that spike tends to be higher and lasts longer. That means the body spends more time in tension mode, and constant tension constricts blood vessels. The penis depends on the opposite: relaxed, responsive vessels. When the endothelium, the inner lining of the vessels, is repeatedly exposed to cortisol spikes, it becomes less efficient. Nitric oxide release drops, and the command for vasodilation arrives weak or delayed. The result shows up hours later, not at the moment you drink coffee. Another important factor is that after 50, the sympathetic nervous system takes over more easily. That means the body slips into action mode with less stimulation. Coffee at the wrong time reinforces this pattern. The man feels more wired and accelerated during the day, but less able to relax when he needs to. Erection requires deep relaxation, not alertness. There's also the issue of vascular sensitivity. With age, blood vessels become less tolerant of sudden, sharp stimulation. The same coffee that used to feel neutral can now produce repeated microcontractions throughout the day. Those contractions don't hurt and don't draw attention, but they reduce the quality of penile blood flow. That's why many men say something curious. I have energy, but my firmness isn't the same. It happens because coffee delivers mental stimulation, but it charges a silent vascular cost. Desire remains, but the body doesn't follow as easily. When this mechanism becomes clear, the conversation changes completely. The problem stops being coffee is bad and becomes coffee at the wrong time creates the wrong effect. Fixing that doesn't require giving up pleasure. It requires physiological intelligence. If this explanation is helping you understand what's happening in your body after 50, like the video now. It helps the channel keep bringing clear, direct, genuinely useful information for men who want to improve penile response without falling for empty promises. The most common mistake when talking about coffee and erectile dysfunction is assuming the impact happens at the moment you drink it. In reality, what affects the penis occurs much later, after the body has gone through a silent chemical sequence almost no one notices. It starts with prolonged cortisol activation. Caffeine stimulates the central nervous system and increases the release of this hormone. In younger men, cortisol rises and falls quickly. After 50, it rises and stays elevated longer. This creates an ongoing internal alert state, even if the man doesn't feel anxious. High cortisol for hours has a direct effect on blood vessels. It favors vasoconstriction, partial tightening of the arteries. It doesn't shut flow down completely, but it makes it less efficient. Blood passes through, but with less volume and less sustained pressure. For the penis, that's decisive. An erection depends on a very specific process. The brain sends the signal, the endothelium releases nitric oxide, vessels relax, and blood rapidly fills the erectile chambers. When cortisol is high, this relaxation is compromised. Nitric oxide breaks down faster and vessels respond more slowly. The result is an erection that may start but doesn't hold with firmness. The problem is the man doesn't connect this to morning coffee or coffee on an empty stomach. He feels it hours later, at the end of the day or at night, and assumes the failure is emotional, fatigue, or simply age. In reality, the body spent the entire day being trained to remain in chemical alert mode. Another rarely discussed point is that cortisol also interferes with vascular sensitivity. Over time, vessels become less responsive to relaxation signals, almost as if they need stronger and stronger input to open. That helps explain why some men report needing more physical or mental stimulation to achieve the same rigidity they had before. This mechanism creates a silent cycle. More coffee at the wrong time, more alertness, less relaxation. Less relaxation, worse penile response. And the more the man tries to compensate with stimulation, the more he reinforces the problem. Understanding this chain changes everything because it shows that erectile dysfunction in many men after 50 doesn't begin in the bedroom, but in the chemical balance maintained throughout the day. And that balance starts long before the intimate moment. When it comes to coffee after 50, the most important question isn't, can I or can't I drink it? It's, at what moment can the body handle this stimulus better without harming penile circulation? And here's a detail almost no man is taught. The body needs a natural stabilization window right after waking. In the first hours of the morning, the body releases cortisol naturally to help you wake up. That peak is physiological. The problem starts when coffee comes in before that process finishes. Caffeine stacks on top of natural cortisol, creating an excess alert signal. The body interprets that as immediate action, not balance. Vessels tighten, heart rate rises, and the vascular system enters tension mode. After 50, that excess alert state isn't easily switched off. The body carries it for hours. When the end of the day arrives, when erections should happen more easily, vessels can still be partially constricted. The man feels desire, but the body doesn't keep up. For most mature men, the better time for coffee is after the natural cortisol peak has passed. That usually happens sometime after waking, especially after the man has eaten or at least hydrated. In that context, coffee doesn't push the body into extreme alert. It acts more like a mild energy reinforcement. Another important point is avoiding coffee during glycemic instability. Drinking coffee while fasting for too long or after a poor night of sleep amplifies cortisol even more. The result is a full day of less responsive vessels. When coffee enters a body that's minimally fed and stable, the vascular impact is much smaller. Timing also affects nighttime shutdown. Coffee consumed later keeps the nervous system active longer. Even if the man sleeps, sleep becomes lighter, and lighter sleep means less nighttime hormonal release, fewer sleep erections, and poorer recovery of penile tissue. Men who adjust their coffee timing often report something interesting. They aren't less productive, but they're less accelerated. Energy becomes steadier, stress drops, and the body alternates better between alertness and relaxation. That balance is essential for sexual response. In the end, coffee doesn't have to be an enemy of erections. But after 50, it has to respect the biological clock. When timing is corrected, the body stops fighting the stimulus and starts using it, without paying the silent price in penile circulation. After 50, coffee stops being just a social stimulant or an automatic habit and becomes a cumulative stimulus. And that's exactly where many men sabotage themselves without realizing it. It's usually not the first cup that causes trouble, it's the daily stacking and the way the body is kept in a constant state of alert. With aging, the body's ability to metabolize caffeine decreases. The liver processes it more slowly and the nervous system stays activated longer. That means a morning cup can still be active in the body by mid-afternoon. When the man adds another and then another, the body never fully returns to a state of vascular relaxation. The result of this buildup is a very specific pattern: mental energy present, but persistent physical tension. Vessels don't close completely, but they remain slightly constricted throughout the day. For the penis, an organ that depends on a fast, intense arterial opening, this chronic constriction is enough to reduce firmness, stability, and duration. Another common mistake is drinking coffee in intervals that are too close together. Each new dose reactivates the alert system before the body has shut down the previous one. That keeps cortisol elevated for hours straight. And high cortisol doesn't match efficient erectile response. It degrades nitric oxide, reduces vascular sensitivity, and trains the body to function in survival mode, not pleasure mode. There's also a silent psychological effect. The man begins associating productivity, focus, and even mood with constant coffee. Without noticing, he becomes dependent on the accelerated state. When the intimate moment arrives, the body can't shift into the opposite state. The deep relaxation needed for erection. Desire exists, but the system doesn't change gears. For many men after 50, less coffee means more predictability. Reducing frequency doesn't remove energy, it removes excess noise. The body alternates better between alertness and rest, and that alternation is essential for the penis to respond when it needs to. This isn't about eliminating pleasure, it's about understanding that the mature organism responds better to strategic moderation than continuous stimulation. Coffee, when used without pauses, steals something valuable: the body's ability to relax at the right time. And without relaxation, no erection can hold, no matter how much desire exists. There's a reason some men adjust coffee timing and quantity and still don't see improvement in penile response. The problem often isn't coffee alone, but what comes with it. Certain combinations create such an unfavorable internal environment that they cancel any timing or moderation strategy. The first classic mistake is coffee on a prolonged, empty stomach. After 50, waking up and taking caffeine with no nutritional base triggers a strong cortisol and adrenaline spike. The body interprets it as a metabolic threat. The result is immediate and prolonged vasoconstriction. Even if the man eats later, the alert signal has already been fired and stays active for hours. Another silent saboteur is sugar. Sweetened coffee paired with white bread, cake, or cookies creates an explosive combination: a glucose spike followed by a sharp drop. That up and down triggers vascular inflammation and reduces nitric oxide availability. For the penis, that means unstable flow and difficulty maintaining rigidity. Artificial sweeteners belong on this list too. Even if they don't raise glucose directly, many can trigger stress responses and interfere with insulin sensitivity. In mature men, that contributes to a confusing metabolic environment the body interprets as constant vigilance. Then there's coffee combined with rushing and stress. Drinking coffee while running, answering messages, already thinking about the day's problems reinforces sympathetic alert mode. The body doesn't care if the stimulus comes from caffeine or the mind, it just reacts by tightening vessels and prioritizing survival. Erections are not a priority in that state. Another overlooked factor is coffee too close to the end of the day. Even when consumed in mid-afternoon, it can interfere with deep sleep. The man sleeps but doesn't reach restorative stages. That reduces nighttime hormone release, decreases sleep erections, and compromises recovery of penile tissue. The next day, the cycle repeats. There's also the combination with alcohol at night. The man spends the day wired on coffee and tries to shut down with alcohol. That extreme switching confuses the nervous system, harms the endothelium, and fragments sleep even more. The penis feels the impact before any other obvious warning sign. The key point is, coffee doesn't act alone. It amplifies the context in which it's consumed. When it enters a body that's already stressed, inflamed, or disorganized, it becomes another factor of imbalance. When it enters a stable environment, it can coexist without damage. After 50, it's not only what you consume, but what you consume it with, and the condition your body is in when it receives that stimulus. Ignoring that keeps the problem alive even when the man believes he has fixed the main mistake. After 50, the biggest change a man can make isn't cutting pleasures or living in constant alert. It's learning to guide the body into the right state at the right time. Penile response doesn't depend on constant stimulation. It depends on transition, moving out of alert mode and into relaxation when it matters. Everything you've seen so far points in the same direction. The problem isn't coffee. The problem is keeping the organism tense all day and expecting it to respond at night as if nothing happened. The body doesn't work like that. Vessels that spent hours constricted don't open instantly. A nervous system that's accelerated doesn't relax on command, and the erection feels that before any other sign. When a man adjusts coffee timing, reduces excess, and eliminates combinations that keep the body in alert mode, something important happens. The body begins alternating states again. Energy when needed. Calm when it's time to relax. That balance is what sustains predictable penile response, without mental effort, without constant testing. Real improvement doesn't show up as a spectacle. It shows up as stability. Erections that don't need to be forced. Less anticipatory anxiety. More presence in the intimate moment. And that changes everything because it restores confidence without pressure. The man stops asking, "Will it work today?" and starts simply living the moment. This adjustment also changes how the body ages. Less inflammation, better sleep, more efficient circulation, and a less overloaded nervous system. The penis follows because it's part of the system, not an isolated piece. Understanding this removes guilt and puts control back in the man's hands, not as rigid obligation, but as physiological awareness. Small decisions repeated every day build a body that responds better when it's called upon. If this video brought you clarity and it made sense to you, subscribe to the channel now to keep receiving direct, medical, real-life applicable content. Like the video, this helps the channel grow and brings this information to more men. And watch other videos on the channel where we go deeper into topics connected to everything you saw here. I'll leave it here. Take care of your body intelligently, respect the signals it gives you, and I'll see you in the next video.